Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Mommy, what's that you hear? 5-year-old Camille stopped talking and listened. Who's that? Is someone crying? Camille didn't make it up. Camille started, but suddenly she heard a long, pitiful moan. Wait, Stephen, what is it? Frightened, she asked her husband, who was walking next to her. Today, on New Year's Eve, they decided the whole family to go to the slide, to go sledding. Their eldest son, Christopher, 8 years old, ran ahead with a friend, and they leisurely walked behind, talking about their own and sledding the younger Camille. She was the one who heard it. The first strange sound was moaning coming from deep in the woods. Wait here, Stephen turned to his wife. And I looked. What is there? Maybe you need help. You only gently asked the wife. But the man no longer heard her words, moving away into the thicket. Camille stepped from foot to foot, and suddenly it became really scary. Even the chatterbox Camille became quiet. And rising from the sled, she came closer to her mother. Camille, shouted Stephen, suddenly appearing among the trees. Everywhere and everywhere sleds. The slide is canceled today. Why was Camille whining? But when she looked at her anxious father, even she realized that something out of the ordinary had happened. So she quickly calmed down. What's wrong? Camille asked. But the husband only waved his hand, saying, You'll see. While the woman called her son and explained that they were not going to the slide today. Christopher excused himself to go sledding with a friend and promised to return in a couple of hours. Stephen pulled the sled out of the woods. Camille gasped. On them sat bent over a small, dry-eyed old woman. Her hands were trembling and her face was all bloody. She was all beaten up. The husband exhaled. She'd been in the woods at least 400 hours. She says she got here early in the morning. Only she couldn't get up light. Must have a broken leg. The man was darker than a cloud. But how she got here, came out at dawn with a broken leg, could not understand Camille. The children had taken her out, the old woman said in a low voice. They left her to die. I was in the way of their lives. A stinging tear rolled down the wrinkle of the old woman's cheek. Camille could not say anything. She seemed numb for a moment. How could this be? How could this have happened? They turned around and walked quickly toward the village. Its outermost houses faced the woods, and the family lived in one of them. Camille looked at the old woman. She was clean and apparatus, her worn coat and shawl lined in her hands. The old woman's eyes were flushed from the cold, and she tried to rub them away. Camille took off her mittens and held them out to the old woman. Thank you, Emily, she said with tears in her eyes. Evelyn, is that you? To say that the woman was surprised is to say nothing. But how could it be? It's me, Emily. And quietly cried the elderly woman. Evelyn was a neighbor of Camille's parents. Well, not exactly a neighbor. She lived in the next 5-story building. But everyone in their yard knew each other. And besides, the woman worked as a head teacher at the local school where Camille studied. The woman always stood out neatly and tastefully dressed on her head. A neat hairstyle, always extremely polite. And Evelyn was also very kind and never raised her voice even at the most egregious bullies. She knew all the school children by name, delved into children's problems, and was always ready to help. So those children, families, which could not be called prosperous, but the certificates entitling them to free lunches, they could not provide. At the head teacher's request, they were fed free of charge in the canteen. Evelyn was ready to take responsibility in case of emergency. She herself was a math teacher, so she took extra classes with those who were preparing for the use or just didn't do well. Naturally, these classes were completely free of charge. Evelyn's husband worked as a supervisor at the Russian railroad, so the family was not poor. They had 2 children, a daughter Jenna and a son John. The difference between the children was a good 8 years. The woman thought well that her daughter would be able to help me a little, and she would be able to manage at home. However, as soon as the woman returned home from the maternity hospital with the baby, she realized that the idyll was over. The daughter took it badly. "Look, Jenna, it's your baby brother. He's just a little baby, defenseless. He needs our support and love." The mother turned to her daughter. "Take him away." Jenna ran in. "I don't want him here. Grandma said you'll love me less when you have a baby brother. That all the toys and candy and everything would go to him." "Jenna, come on, daughter. How can we love you less? Get him out of here." The daughter threw a tantrum, and the woman realized she just wouldn't. "Evelyn, I see where this is coming from." Her mutual dislike of her mother-in-law, which had been going on since they'd known each other, was taking its toll. Robert's mother, to her husband Evelyn, considered herself elite. She was always in power at the time Robert and Evelyn met. Wendy, a student at the pedagogical school, was the deputy head of the district administration, a position of respect and money. Therefore, the female student barely dignified a glance. This girl, in her opinion, was unworthy to stand next to her son. A great future awaited Robert. To this, the mother was ready to make every effort. And one of the components of a worthy position in society was, in Wendy's opinion, a successful marriage. "Kolenka," the woman said to her son, "will you take a good look? Don't take it out on me. Kevin, the plant manager, has a daughter a year younger than you. She's beautiful, smart. She's going to study in Moscow prospects there." "I don't like her," Mom answered Robert. "And Sophia, parents are older economists. The dream is just a quiet, calm, responsible mother." "Mom, I'm going to marry Evelyn," Robert said firmly. And he did. His mother-in-law couldn't change his mind. But then she got the best of her. Everything the girl did was wrong. No matter how hard she tried to get along with her husband's mother, she just hated her. "What are you, Mashka?" Wendy assiduously called her daughter-in-law that way, not responding to her request to call her Evelyn. "What are you cooking?" squeamishly squeaked. She dangled a spoon in her plate. "Borscht," and without raising her eyes, answered the girl. "Borscht. And what about the potatoes? Why did she cut them in such pieces, like cabbage with noodles? Where did you sing such borscht?" "Of course I did. And that's what you ate in your remote village. We'd be ashamed to offer it to pigs." Wendy knocked the borscht into the garbage can and turned to nothing. "God didn't send word. Can't even feed a normal family. Where did your eyes go?" It was already addressed to his son. Robert tried not to get involved in women's quarrels. He thought it was not a man's business. There was no one to protect the young woman. Her work was criticized. She earned pennies. Clothes are nothing but poverty. Manners of behavior of the village did not want. Therefore, as soon as there was an opportunity to move from her mother-in-law, Evelyn grasped it as a lifeline. Her husband, as a young specialist, was offered a job, and with it housing in a neighboring village. "Don't even think about it," her mother shouted. "Only in the capital you have such prospects." However, Evelyn made it clear to her husband that if they did not leave, they would not live together. The guy did not want to leave under his mother's wing. It's convenient to remain a favorite 10, not a man, an earner. And the head of the family was convenient, and the fact that the mother and in their village all knew and respected. She was not the last place in the local hierarchy. That is, all roads were open for Robert. However, he did not want to lose his young wife. He had married for love. Therefore, no matter how his mother persuaded him, she did not promise him golden mountains. The young people left, gave them a one-bedroom in a new building, which eventually managed to exchange with extra payment for a good two-bedroom apartment in a dormitory neighborhood. After that, the mother-in-law hated Evelyn even more and demonstrated it in every possible way. Wendy very rarely came to visit them, and when she did, she tried to show her daughter-in-law her superiority and wiped the dust with a napkin. She pushed the young woman in her face and found stains on dishes and cabinets. No matter how much my daughter-in-law tried to talk to her, to convince her that this was her and her husband's home, Wendy claimed it was my son's apartment. You're here temporarily, so I'm making sure you don't litter. The husband didn't react to his mother's remarks, as usual, and didn't get into a fight. Evelyn tried to cross paths with her mother-in-law as little as possible, to the point that on her rare visits she went to spend the night at a friend's house. Wendy, of course, tried to impress upon her son that his wife was going out, but she was not ashamed of her lover. But he didn't react to it. He knew where and why his wife was going. However, it lasted until Jenna was born. After that, the young mother couldn't leave home with a baby in her arms. However, and Wendy turned out with the birth of a granddaughter settled down. Perhaps she finally accepted the inevitability of the situation, or maybe she just lay low. However, she accepted and even loved her granddaughter. She picked up Evelyn and Jenna from the hospital with her son. She brought good, quality skates and diapers, bought somewhere on a blat, and even imported diapers brought by someone from abroad. She worked her ass off around the baby. And change and wash. And walk always, please. It seemed even with the fact that the mother of her favorite granddaughter, Evelyn woman, little by little reconciled. Although, of course, she continued to poke her nose, daughter-in-law in her blunders. And then with the birth of the baby became more time at the young mother became much less, and teach mother-in-law very much liked and feed. Morality is not so and kicks. Not right and juice is already time to give. And diapers should be ironed on both sides. Evelyn barely survived the first year of her happy motherhood. Thankfully, my mother-in-law lived in a neighboring village and even worked. Otherwise, she would not have given her life at all. It was also saved by the fact that they lived in a one-room apartment. Wendy liked comfort, so her son did not stay long. Time passed. Jenna went to kindergarten, and Evelyn went to work. Now her husband and daughter could go to Wendy's on weekends without her. She had made it clear that she would not miss her daughter-in-law. However, after that weekend, the daughter arrived completely different. Wouldn't listen to anyone or anything, robbed her, even did things out of spite. Grandma said, "I can do anything," said girl, "but you're bad. You don't allow it. Robert, please talk to your mother. Tell her not to turn her daughter against me." The woman asked for her husband. "You're not the one who needs to talk, you talk. I won't quarrel with my mother." He always answered. "And she doesn't turn her daughter against you. It's all a fantasy." As usual, the husband hid his head in the sand. Evelyn tried to limit the daughter's communication with her grandmother, but it was also ineffective. Mother-in-law began to call and scandalize, pressured her son, and he quickly gave up. He got used to obeying the authoritarian mother. That's the way it was. Jenna had the best of everything. Everything she wanted, her mother-in-law bought for her. Her husband also spared no expense for his favorite daughter. Because of that, the little girl grew up capricious and spoiled. Buy and buy, and buy me this doll, screaming and stomping her feet in the store. "No, you have almost the same one at home. Just yesterday you came from grandma with a new belly button." Next time, tried to convince her daughter. "Woman, you're bad," screamed the girl. "My grandmother buys me everything I want. I'd rather live with her. I hate you." The next weekend, Jenna would come back from her grandmother's with a doll like that. And it was like that with everything. It was as if the mother-in-law was deliberately trying to make her daughter hate her mother. And now Jenna. But he's so little. Evelyn wouldn't stop trying. "I don't want him to live here," you shouted the girl. Jenna, my sweet woman, wanted to hug her daughter, but she pushed her away and ran to her room, slamming the door loudly. Evelyn leaned against the door and cried. With the birth of John, their home only left peace when their daughter left with her father to visit her grandmother. Evelyn could take a break from the constant scandals. Mother-in-law, by the way, to the birth of a grandson took a very cool attitude. She called her daughter-in-law on the phone and either congratulated or reproached her. "Now you have a girl and a boy. I hope you don't plan to have any more children. No gifts, no weekly visits, no guidance. None of that with John." Jenna became even more estranged from her mother. Every chance she got, she went to her grandmother, who idolized her favorite granddaughter. "Daughter, please watch John. I need to go to the store to get bread." The woman asked her daughter, "I don't need him. I won't watch him." She defiantly went to her room. "Well, then go get bread." In the back of her daughter shouted, "Mother, you need to go." "You go," she replied, and as usual, slammed the door. And in the evening, Robert, returning from work, scolded Evelyn for the fact that, having spent the whole day at home, she had not gone for bread. The relationship with her husband was also beginning to deteriorate. The enthusiastic love was gone. Character traits that she hadn't paid attention to before began to emerge. It turned out that Robert is not only a mama's boy, but also a big lazy. He would go to his mother's house on weekends to avoid helping his wife with the baby. Wendy welcomed her son in every way possible, didn't stress him with chores and responsibilities. At his mother's place, he could just lie on the couch for days, tucked into the computer or TV, meet with school friends, sleep until dinner, that is, feel like a little boy again. He liked it very much. But at home, he tried to show himself a real master, and he could be nagging about the cleaning, like the dust on the windowsill for a week in cooking. Why is there soup from yesterday? He has to do with relationships too. You see, he wants the love of a husband, and the wife is all busy with the child. By the way, John was a very cranky baby. He continued to have infantile colic for a long time, and the boy at night almost did not sleep with him, and Evelyn. Mother-in-law came to visit them until the first birthday only once for the discharge from the maternity hospital. That is, there was no help from her. My husband thought that taking care of the baby is exclusively a woman's business. He didn't take his son in his arms very often, not even to walk him or feed him. Jenna was out of the question. Her daughter would not go near her baby brother. So Evelyn managed alone and was completely exhausted. In the summer, Wendy offered to take Jenna to the seaside. She got a trip to the Crimea. Evelyn couldn't help but let her daughter go. Besides, she'd had another scandal. She firmly decided to go with her grandmother. Her husband was often late at work, and in general did not hurry home. There waited a tired wife and an eternally crying child. It seemed to the woman that she alone needed John. Mother-in-law and husband were completely indifferent to the baby. Therefore, she tried to love the baby for everyone. Her love for him was boundless. The mother tried to compensate for the dislike of the baby to her relatives. Time passed. Jenna was already in 6th grade, John in kindergarten. Evelyn went to work, unable to stay at home any longer. Not much had changed in the family. Jenna still disliked her brother and tried to hurt him. She would push him, hide his favorite toy, or tear his drawing. The boy cried and complained to his mother. However, her daughter did not put in anything. In the first place in the girl was still her grandmother and father. That, by the way, paid less and less attention to his family. It was work or friends or hunting. With Evelyn, they had little in common before. Everything asked for love. But in time, they became strangers, almost never spoke, totally disinterested in each other's problems. To be more precise, Evelyn tried to talk to her husband, to establish contact, but he was not interested at all. He brushed off her attempts to change things. Evelyn plunged headlong into school life, the kids and the worries, the holidays and parent-teacher conferences, helping to take her mind off her own problems. Soon, however, the problems became impossible to ignore. Her relationship with Robert became increasingly strained. "Cole, what's going on?" Evelyn brought it up one day. "You've become a stranger. We haven't talked for 100 years. We don't go out together like we used to. What are you making up?" "It's okay. I've had so much work lately. I can't keep up. And here you are with your conversations that you have nothing to do." My husband resented me. The conversation did not go well. The woman thought sadly. She felt that it was not about work at all. Late return and the subtle scent of expensive women's perfume, the secret made manifest. Once on vacation, when Jenna was at her grandmother's, John at daycare, and her husband at work at the door of their 2-bedroom apartment, they had bought after giving birth. John rang the bell. Evelyn was surprised she didn't call for anyone. A young, confident blonde stood on the doorstep and regarded her cheekily without taking her eyes off her. "I'll come in," the damsel asserted more than asked. "Enter warily," muttered Evelyn. The stranger scrutinized and stared intently at the woman with a slightly contemptuous gaze. Evelyn. She caught the familiar scent of perfume. Here she is, she thought bitterly. What will it be about? She already knew. "My name is Vanessa," the stranger said confidently. "I am your husband's mistress. I can't say that I'm glad to meet you," tried to sarcastic Evelyn. But she succeeded badly. The girl appeared to pay no attention to her words. "Nee is going through a very difficult period," Vanessa continued. "He needs support, care, and love. I can provide him with all that. And I can't." The woman was even surprised. "And he's going through a difficult period. He has a new position as head of the department. It's such a responsibility." The girl rolled her eyes. "And yes, you can't do it. You always have problems, children to take care of, and knees need care and attention. And how do you know about my problems and concerns?" Evelyn asked defiantly. "How?" "From a Korean woman. He's been complaining to me himself," the rival replied. "And then he doesn't love you. You don't let him develop harmoniously." Evelyn suddenly laughed nervously. "I don't let him develop," she said through her laughter. Vanessa shrugged her shoulders in bewilderment. This is weird, she thought. I'm taking her husband away from her, and she's laughing. Evelyn couldn't calm down. Tears rolled from her eyes. And she kept laughing, and she stopped laughing, just as suddenly as she started. "What do you want?" she said tiredly, suddenly switching to you. The girl was even taken aback by this turn of events. She couldn't say anything, only flapped her eyes. "Do you want my husband?" asked Evelyn in the forehead. "So take him. I won't cry. Now go." The woman opened the door. "All right," Vanessa said as she left. She's weird, she thought again. Evelyn was lying. After the student left, she sobbed for a long time, tucked into her pillow. Her whole life, her plans and dreams had all gone to hell. It was one thing to guess about the presence of a mistress in her husband, and quite another to see her with her own eyes. After work, her husband didn't come home. The children didn't ask questions. They were used to their father's late returns. Evelyn tried to distract herself. She checked her notebooks for a long time, played with her son, helped her daughter write an essay. She asked for help for once. At night, the woman did not sleep well. The children fell asleep, and she sat at the kitchen window and thought how to live on. Toward evening of the next day, Robert came to get her things. They went out to the kitchen. "I'm leaving quietly," the husband said. "The other day I will file for divorce. I'm leaving the apartment to the children. I won't refuse alimony, but it's better that you don't file. So I'll pay the right amount every month." "What am I gonna tell the kids?" That's all Evelyn asked. "Whatever you want to say. I don't care at all." Robert grinned. "It's not the kids I'm leaving you for. I'm sick of this domesticity. You're always tired missing borscht. You've seen Vanessa is young, and the wings are promising. And you. Once upon a time, you were like that too. Only it was a long time ago. You were different once," Evelyn said in her husband's tone. The door to the kitchen opened abruptly. Jenna stood on the doorstep. It was obvious from her face that the girl had heard the conversation between the adults, and she didn't like it. "Daddy, Daddy," for Reed, she did not go away. "Do not leave me. I do not leave you, and I do not leave you," answered Robert. "I'm leaving your mother. So it's your fault," exhaled the daughter with such anger that Evelyn was frightened. "All because of you. You can come to me," the man continued. "We'll go to Grandma's together. By the way," Vanessa turned to his wife, "beautiful, stroked with my mother. And you for all the years of our life together, and could not do it. Well, congratulations," Evelyn replied quietly. "I hate you," shouted Jenna to her mother. "Daddy, take me with you." "Wait, Daughter Robert obviously didn't expect this turn of events. I need to discuss this with Vanessa. All because of you, shouted once again the girl Evelyn and ran in tears to her room. Robert calmly packed his bags and was gone. Jenna never left the room that evening. And only little John, not realizing what was happening. He wiped the tears on his mother's cheeks with his hands and asked in a childishly naive way, "Mommy, don't cry. I love you so much." Life began in a new format. Jenna had hardly communicated with her mother before, and now she ignored her. The girl blamed her for everything that had happened. No matter how hard the woman tried, she could not get in touch with her daughter. One weekend, Evelyn got a call from her mother-in-law. "And I was thinking," she started without even saying hello. "Jenna's supposed to be in school for the second half of the year. I was just finishing up my first semester at school. It's better for everyone." Everyone who? Evelyn doesn't get it. Robert, for example. The girl misses him and has been calling almost every day. They've been asking to visit. What's that about? He's got a young wife just getting settled in. I'll have the girl with me and I'll feel better. My beloved granddaughter is near and Kolia's life will stabilize a bit. And who will think of me? Jenna is my daughter. She's not going anywhere. She'll be at her school. And if you turn her against me, you'll never see her again. That's the first time I ever raised my voice to my mother-in-law. Now she no longer cared at all about this woman's attitude towards her. "It's your own fault," my mother-in-law said. "You missed your husband, and now they're biting their elbows." No, they're not biting their elbows. And your son is not such a happiness to cry about him at night. He's gone. Good riddance, but I'm not giving you my daughter. Wendy didn't even stop talking. She didn't expect such a rebuff from her silent and modest daughter-in-law. "We'll work it out." That's all she said. On winter vacation, Jenna went to her grandmother, however, about the move, so did not talk anymore. After the new year, Evelyn and Robert divorced. The divorce passed without excesses. The man signed over the apartment to the children. Evelyn filed for legal alimony. "I told you to pay alimony." The ex-husband grinned. However, he paid faithfully. With the children, Robert did not communicate often. From time to time, took them to the shopping mall, water park, or any other entertainment. So Dad became a holiday for the children, and Mom almost a domestic tyrant. She made them clean and do homework, and go to gymnastics. Jenna, from the age of 6 years, was engaged in gymnastics, but often lazy and tried to hack. Her mom, on the other hand, rarely had to remind her daughter to practice. Therefore, Jenna's announcement that she will live with her father for Evelyn did not come as a surprise. "I'm going to my father," said the girl after another scandal about a double in math. "Do you think there will not have to learn lessons?" The mother was indignant. "Dad's normal. He won't give me a hard time about it. He's always understood me better than you have." "Well, tired," Evelyn replied. "Try it." Jenna was just finishing the first semester of 7th grade. The girl was an honor student. She was tutoring, and her mom was trying to help her with her studies. Robert was not happy about her daughter's decision to move in with him, but he did not dissuade her. The girl packed her things and went to the new home of her father and young stepmother. They lived in a cottage, which the man originally built for the family. He said that he had always dreamed of living in his own house, not in an apartment. However, Evelyn and the children never got to live in the new house. Robert brought his new wife, and Jenna moved in. For the vacations, as usual, her father took Jenna to stay with her grandmother. She took the trouble to call Evelyn. "Well, dear, have you had enough?" She started the conversation with a sneer. "Your daughter left you for her father. You're going to be alone. We'll see about that." The daughter-in-law replied calmly, "Time will tell. Hope dies last." The mother-in-law laughed. Olechka told how well she was received at her father's Vanessa, and she was given a separate room and clothes. They chose new ones together and went to a beauty salon. The girl is now at least a modern teenager, like the daughter of a tedious teacher, and it's all thanks to Swallow. She's such a sweetheart. God. Evelyn was pretending to be horrified. The daughter now has green hair and piercings. No, she doesn't have piercings. His father-in-law hissed angrily, and her hair is pink. Wendy, I don't mind my daughter looking like a normal teenager. Evelyn cut the conversation short. Jenna started the third quarter living at her father's house, not wanting to study, of course. She wanted to party and have fun. Besides, there was no one to control her here. Robert worked from morning till late at night, and it was enough for Vanessa that when she asked if you had done your homework, Jenna answered in the affirmative. Robert's new wife was more preoccupied with herself than with anything else. She visited the beauty salon weekly, went to the pool, and for massages was a regular at the fitness gym. Can I go there with you? Jenna asked her. Jenna, girl, wouldn't you be interested there? Vanessa replied. She was not at all happy about the prospect of dragging a teenage girl around with her. The young woman was used to freedom of movement and socialization. She didn't need any extra eyes and ears, so often Jenna stayed at home. One girl began to skip extra classes and gymnastics, could not show up for English for several days. Only Jenna had to go to school every day. Her mother worked there, and she had just become head teacher. Evelyn resented the gymnastics coach, Nancy, on the phone. Jenna had completely lost interest in classes. Goes 2 days later on the 3rd. She's distracted, not trying. I understand, but I don't think I can help you right now. Let's just wait a little while. It's not critical. I'm counting on you. The coach replied. Meanwhile, resentment was growing at the Robert house. It turned out that being parents of a teenager is not so easy. Besides, the girl was not used to doing anything even in her own home. Returning home, Vanessa often made unwashed dishes and crumbs on the table. Jenna could take out bread for sandwiches and leave it on the table and fall asleep. She often forgot to clean out the refrigerator. Food would scatter her things, and her room was a constant mess. Vanessa didn't like to do chores, but she tried to keep the house in order. With their Robert schedule, it was easy. She usually cleaned. More often than not, she called a cleaning service once a week, and that was enough. Now she had to keep things in order. Every day, Jenna tried to make sense of it. She's a stepdaughter. You could at least do your own dishes. You didn't even put them in the sink. Left it on the table to fall asleep. I don't know how to do it, the girl said. At home, my mother does it. Your mother's not here, and there are no servants, Vanessa said, and I'm not going to be your maid. The woman collected her stepdaughter's things from around the house, candy wrappers and banana peels. That's it. I can't take it anymore, she told her husband one day. Do something. What can I do if you're a grown woman who can't get along with a normal teenager? The husband resented her. A normal teenager. It's your daughter who's a regular teenager. You spoil her. So it is simply impossible to live in the same room with her. She's my daughter. I can't kick her out. Robert ended the conversation. Vanessa began to go rogue. She began to tell her husband at every opportunity that it was better for the child to live with her mother, that she also wanted to have a baby with him. But living in the same house as Jenna, it would not be easy. Robert did not react in any way to these conversations. Vanessa's attitude towards Jenna had changed a lot. Now she was no longer happy that the girl chose to live with her father instead of her mother. And then Jenna got her 7th grade report card. It turned her from an A student to a C student. Robert was yelling into the phone. Wendy, don't you pay any attention to the girls in there. Your thankful one stays home all day. She should be taking care of the baby. And Jenna doesn't want to tutor her. And Vanessa's not a teacher. How can she help her? What about tutoring? The girl's been getting tutoring. The mother-in-law went on. Evelyn was doing that. I don't really know. I know Jenna's going somewhere, either English or math. What math? Her mother took math with her. Then I don't know, the son replied. Wendy realized something had gone wrong. She was an old school person and believed that education should come first. Besides, Jenna had told her that she had practically given up gymnastics. What do you do? The woman asked confusedly. I sit on the internet with my girlfriends, go for walks. I go to the skating rink, started listing granddaughter. And the grandmother suddenly clearly realized that there was nowhere good to wait. She decided to call Vanessa too. She's a woman. A mother-to-be must realize the importance of what's going on. The grades are bad. The new daughter-in-law wasn't surprised at all. So not surprised. She doesn't go near books at home. She's always out and about on the internet, and she never cleans up after herself. Throws things around the house on the bed. He can almost walk in with his boots on. Vanessa kept complaining. So you're raising her family now. My mother-in-law did. I have to raise her. She doesn't even notice me. I've begged her. I've scolded her. She's like a pea against the wall. Raised a girl. There's nothing to say. She's the only reason we fight with Robert. Vanessa said in her heart of hearts. Wendy realized that Jenna had to be rescued. Evelyn dialed her ex-sister-in-law's number. Have you forgotten about your daughter? What makes you think that? She asked calmly. The child has almost a D on her report card. You work at school yourself, don't you know? Shouted mother-in-law. And you don't yell at me, Wendy, knowing everything. But Jenna decided to leave not without your help. By the way, she doesn't want to study. She's even abandoned her extra classes. Robert lets her do everything, and his wife doesn't give a damn. She's not her daughter. We'll do what we're going to do. The mother-in-law asked tiredly. She remembered how she had unobtrusively treated Jenna last year. Her father has connections, and more prospects will open up before her, and she will have everything she desires. She was not justified. What can I do? We must bring the daughter home, said Evelyn. And so it was agreed. Meanwhile, at Robert's house, another scandal was brewing. Jenna had worn her new tracksuit to school without Vanessa's permission. When the girl returned home, her stepmother and father were already there. What's this? Looking carefully at her stepdaughter, Vanessa said, That's my costume. Why are you wearing it? It's not a big deal. I just borrowed it. Jenna replied nonchalantly. What's the big deal? I had no problem borrowing my mom's stuff. What's the big deal? No problem. Vanessa was starting to freak out. I thought I told you to take my mom's stuff and wear it. Don't you dare touch my stuff. You heard me. Don't you dare. Honey, why are you so nervous? Robert tried to calm his wife down. Well, she's wearing your suit. It's just a little problem. A little problem. You say yes, it's a daughter. Your problem is one big problem. She's the reason our family's in trouble. I don't like people touching my stuff. You know my stuff. I don't want some little kid going through my closet, screamed Vanessa. Jenna paid the price. Okay. The woman finally calmed down. Now it's either me or her. I don't want another minute in the same house with your ill-mannered daughter. Well, you again, disappointedly stretched Robert, glanced at the daughter, and ran to calm down. He raged at his wife. Vanessa was in her room actively trying to unpack her things. However, she did it not too quickly, so that her husband had time to get up and dissuade her. My dear, well, do not get hot. Affectionately addressed the man to his wife. She is still a child. Robert, I can no longer decide to change tactics, Vanessa. Let her go back to her mother. You can take her on weekends, go out with her, but I can't live like this anymore. Vanessa suddenly started crying, and Robert was just numb with surprise. He had never seen his wife cry before. Robert, I love you so much, the young wife continued. And I love Jenna, but she doesn't give me anything. It hurts me so much to be loved. Don't get upset, don't get upset, he consoled his wife. Vanessa realized the battle was won. Jenna, you're gonna have to go back to your mother. Robert went into his daughter's room. Why the hell did you study? I'm not wearing her costume anymore. It's not that great. What the hell do you care about that suit? My dad was outraged. We bought you a better one last week. Well, everyone at school has seen it, and it's not new. Jenna simply explained what she did. Well, it's not yours. Father tried to explain the problem again. So what? We are the same family. The girl didn't seem to understand. Her father looked at her carefully. "Why do you hate her so much?" "In the forehead," he asked, and Jenna turned away to the window. "Why shouldn't I?" With quiet anger, she whispered, "She's the reason you left your family. She's your main person now. See, you're even driving me away because of her." "I'm not," Robert tried to justify himself. "Yes, you are. I understand. A young wife is more valuable than a daughter. But she'll give you a baby too. Then you'll forget all about me." "Jenna, you're wrong. You're my favorite daughter. How can I forget you?" "You will. It's only a matter of time," the girl said sullenly. "I understand everything. I'm leaving for my mom's tomorrow." Jenna went back to her house, and Vanessa and Robert went on with their normal lives. But back home, the girl took it out on her family. She still didn't listen. Her mother insulted her little brother, yelled and threw tantrums. However, she began to study better and returned to gymnastics. Jenna graduated from school with a gold medal. She studied to spite everyone, as she said. She went to the Institute of International Relations, left home, as in the dormitory, and the girl did not want to live. Her father agreed to pay for her rented apartment. Home, Jenna came home very rarely. Called often too. Mostly when she needed to transfer money to her card. Life went on as usual. Robert and Vanessa had a son of their own by this time. Therefore, John was rarely contacted by his father. So did his grandmother, Wendy. She financially supported her favorite granddaughter, Adore Jr. Although she was not very welcome at Robert's house now, she had always been indifferent to John. The boy was often ill, not much needed by his relatives, so he grew up under his mother's wing. She tried to make sure that the son did not need anything, did not feel unwanted, so he became a likeness of the eldest daughter. How did that happen? Evelyn didn't understand, and she didn't believe it when people said bad things about John. In her eyes, he was the perfect child, unlike the straightforward and defiant Jenna. John did everything underhandedly. He had learned it when his sister was home. She used to hurt him a lot, so he'd sneak up on her. He accidentally pours a glass of water on her notebook, then hides all her pens, then molds the camera in her phone with plasticine. Miranda knew who was doing it. She'd get into fights, but the mother always covered the boy, like she didn't see it herself, and now she's blaming it on John. John liked the impunity of such behavior. He continued his activities at school. He rubbed the board on Athens. Then one of his classmates poured water into his briefcase. Then his desk mate let cockroaches into his pencil case. And he always got nothing to do with it. A good boy, the son of the head teacher, almost an excellent student. No one even suspected him of such pranks. Usually for his pranks received other habitual bullies of the class. However, soon the kid got bored. Not enough extreme. John took Parker, but it turned out to be dangerous and difficult occupation. You had to train a lot. And the boy didn't like that. Studying was easy for him. It was enough to listen to the lesson, and he knew the material. He repeated it at home, and it was done. John could not do sports. What kind of sports did his mother send him to? He didn't stay anywhere. As soon as it came to work and monotonous training, the guy gave up. Didn't last long. It was the same with Parker. John tried to run his blog, but again it was necessary to select interesting content. It did not work out for the guy to quickly become famous and get his piece of fame. Time passed. The older John got, the more problems he had with it. Class. The guy said that he was tired of studying, and he was quitting school. His mother barely persuaded him to finish 9 grades to go to technical school. By that time, the guy gathered around him a group of similarly not too purposeful boys, and they after classes staggered around the neighborhood in search of adventure. Naturally, John's academic performance dropped sharply. No one set him as an example. On the contrary. But that didn't bother the kid. "John, what is going on with you?" Mother tried to understand her son. "You have everything. Study. You'll get into the institute. As Jenna, you will have a good specialty and a job." Without remembering it, The son grimaced. Their dislike for his sister was mutual. Why do I need this? Who needs it now? It's your higher education. These official jobs with poverty wages, and without education I will find a great job. And if I want to shake my long, multicolored, Small recently painted it in the colors of the rainbow to protest against exams at school. Son, but with an education it will be easier to find a job. My mother wouldn't stop. Jobs are for wimps. This is the time of new technologies and solutions. The kid's argument was pathetic. I'm not going to work in a factory from dawn to dusk for pennies. You're not gonna make much money that way. How do you make it? Mother asked. It takes luck, John explained to his mother, and a little trickery. Soon Evelyn was called to the police. John was accused of attempting some kind of computer fraud. Thankfully, the attempts were not too successful. The friends didn't screw anyone over. And the fact that the guy was under 16 years old at the time also played an important role. They were fined and had an unpleasant conversation in the office of one of the officers. It was he who advised Evelyn to send her son somewhere for a while, so to speak, to change his environment. At that time, their school was issuing vouchers to children's health camps. However, they were for children of certain social categories, for the privileged, so to speak. But Evelyn managed to get one voucher for her son. Let him get a change of scenery, she decided, make new friends, maybe grow up. If she'd known where this trip would lead, she never would have bought it. But the mother only wanted what was best for her son. John had been stalling for a long time. He didn't want to go to any camp. No mountains, no skiing, no opportunity to meet new people. Nothing boded well for the guy. He could only be persuaded by the fact that the trip was to be during school hours. John was so lazy that for the sake of not going to school and not learning lessons, he was even ready to go to camp. Only you will give me 1,000 R for each day I spend there, the boy declared. But you're going for 21 days, the mother resented. Don't you think that's overkill? I'm telling you that you don't need a college degree to make a decent living, laughed the son. Am I serious? If you don't, I won't give you money. Evelyn had to give the son the required amount, and he finally agreed to the trip. The son went to camp, and the woman decided that she, too, could pull up her schoolwork and relax. John called, said he had arrived, was fine, settled in, and asked her not to call him again. He's not a little kid anymore. If anything, he'll call him himself. Evelyn wasn't even offended. She was relieved. She was calm for her son because he was under supervision. She could mind her own business, she thought. The next day, however, she received a call from the hospital where her mother-in-law had been taken. Neither her son nor her daughter-in-law could be contacted. Her mother-in-law had suffered a stroke. Medication and follow-up care were urgently needed. Evelyn left work, canceling a meeting. She called Robert several times, but he didn't pick up. Your mother's having a stroke. She wrote in a message, giving the number of the hospital where the woman had been taken. However, her husband didn't call back until the evening. Turns out he left his phone at home. And Vanessa did not answer calls from unknown numbers. Her mother-in-law's number in her phone was blocked. That's why Evelyn had to register her former relative in the hospital. She also went to her house to get the necessary things. She had a car. After all, the mother-in-law still lived in the neighboring village. Only in the late afternoon settled all the affairs of the hospital and explained that with her ex-husband tired woman was able to return home. Wendy's condition was not critical. She could even move around, but needed medical supervision and continued treatment. Therefore, when she was discharged from the hospital after 10 days, she could not go home. In addition, the woman needed constant care. Evelyn was visited one evening by her ex-husband. I have something very important to do with you, he said as he entered the apartment. I wonder what it is. The woman wondered. Evelyn, I left you the apartment in the divorce, didn't I? He began from afar. Yes, thank you. You did. I don't understand, but what are you getting at? The ex-wife replied. Tomorrow my mother will be discharged home. She can't go. She needs care and treatments. Oh, good. And I couldn't understand Evelyn. I'll listen and don't interrupt. Robert's getting nervous. I can't take my mother in. She and Vanessa don't get along. And we have a small child here. And Mom needs her rest. The little kid was 5 years old at the time. So I was thinking, you're still alone in a 2-bedroom apartment. Daughter's in the capital, son's at camp. Take the mother in. She's not a stranger to you, and I'll come by as needed to bring medicine and groceries. Are you serious? Evelyn looked carefully at her ex-husband. Your mother has hated and oppressed me all my life. She wouldn't let me take a step in peace, and I'm supposed to house her in my house and take care of her. Are you out of your mind? If Vanessa doesn't want your mother-in-law, put her in a nursing home. This has nothing to do with me. It was your mother who asked to come to you. Robert said quietly. He's gotten older and older all at once. She won't. She's been sitting with strangers, telling me how to trust. But if you don't mind, I'll look for a boarding house for her. She and Vanessa can't exactly live in the same house. All right, let her stay here. Evelyn suddenly agreed. She hadn't expected herself to say that. But we'll still need a nurse. I'm working to quit my job because of your mother. I'm not going to. Robert went home happy, and Evelyn wondered for a long time why she had agreed to this adventure. The next day, her ex-husband left her ex-mother-in-law with everything to try. She took over Jenna's room and took over. Wendy survived a mild stroke. She was lucky. She quickly realized something was wrong with her, and a neighbor took her to the hospital right away. That's why the effects weren't severe. Sluggish movements and slowed speech were all that gave away the illness. However, Wendy was very scared for her life, so she took the treatment more than seriously. Evelyn asked in a pitiful voice, "Bring me some water." Evelyn took a break from the computer on which she was typing another report and ran to get water for her mother-in-law. "Make me some broth." The daughter asked Wendy again, and Evelyn went to prepare the broth. During the day, the mother-in-law was cared for by a neighbor, an elderly woman, a pensioner. Her services were paid for by Robert. With her, Wendy was friendly and daughter-in-law, and the same she still tried to poke around. Now Evelyn was trying to finish all her schoolwork, didn't rush home like she used to. She had to pay all her attention to her mother-in-law. She slowly moved around the apartment, even went outside to sit on a bench. The nurse helped her with that. 2 weeks passed. John came home, and first he made a scandal because my grandmother lived in their apartment. "Why didn't she ask me?" he yelled. "It's my apartment too." "Yeah, but it's your grandmother's too." Tried to talk some sense into his mother. "I don't want her here. You're not coming back here anyway. Let her go to Papa's. There's plenty of room there." "John, but it's not forever. Grandma will get better and she'll go home." "When will that be?" "He won't put up with her here," screamed the teenager. After John grabbed his backpack and slammed the door and left, Evelyn cried and went to make dinner. The guy came back after 12. "Why are you so late?" The mother was indignant. "Leave me alone," sounded in reply, and John went to his room. The usual routine began. Evelyn was torn between her son and her mother-in-law, between home and work. Good that the neighbor helped with chores around the house, and her ex-husband groceries and medicines for his mother. Jenna called once. Her grandmother did not transfer the promised amount to her in time. She sent her granddaughter money every month. Having learned that Wendy was in trouble, the girl only sighed disappointedly. Her money was no longer to be counted on. Evelyn began to notice that there was something wrong with John. The fact that he began to be rude and snapped at home. She wrote it off on the move to their mother-in-law. However, the guy began to behave like this at school. If he used to do some homework and answer in class, now he demonstratively did not go to the blackboard when he was called. After returning from the camp, the guy did not get a single normal grade. Both teachers and students complained about him. Evelyn decided to talk to her son. As usual, he went out for a walk and came back when the family had dinner. "John, what's wrong? What's going on with you?" she asked her son. "With me? What's wrong with me?" The son laughed and his eyes glistened strangely. Evelyn was suddenly afraid. She sensed something wrong. "You've been rude. You've completely abandoned your studies. What do you care about studying?" The child suddenly shouted angrily in a completely different tone. "If I want to, I'll never go there again." John locked himself in his room, and Evelyn became even more certain that something was wrong with his son. Just what exactly was wrong with him? She didn't understand yet. She guessed, but she was afraid to admit it to herself. The next day, the woman returned early. Her son was already home. He'd gone to school. He was going outside. "I'm calling one of my friends." "You're not going anywhere." The mother stood on the doorstep as he was about to go out. "What do you mean, I'm not going? Get out of the way." John tried to get past his mother. "You're staying home tonight," Evelyn said confidently. "I said back off. I have to go out." "They're waiting for me," shouted the teenager, glaring angrily with his eyes. "John, will you stay home?" The woman repeated, "Get out of here. I want to get out." The boy tried to push his mother away. His eyes were full of hatred. "What are you doing? Don't you dare." They heard the voice of Wendy, who came out of her room and saw what was going on. "It's your mom," she said quietly, sliding down the wall. Evelyn rushed to her and John out the door. Wendy was taken to the hospital again, but she never came out of there again. Evelyn and Robert took turns being on duty outside her room. Her son got the best medicine for his mother, but a second stroke gave her no chance of recovery. Wendy was buried in her home village. Evelyn took care of the paperwork and burial arrangements. Robert was so devastated by his mother's death that he could do nothing. He didn't seem to understand what was happening at all. Vanessa arrived only to do an audit of her mother-in-law's house. She took all the money, jewelry, and valuable things. "Kolenka, I'm so sorry," she said to her husband. "I have no idea what to do next. Let Evelyn handle it. She'll do a better job. Funerals are very scary for me. I can't do it." Evelyn didn't refuse. She decided she was doing it in memory of her ex-mother-in-law. She felt guilty, and in her death. There were many people at the farewell ceremony. Wendy was buried in her home township, so colleagues, acquaintances, and neighbors also came. And there were quite a few of them. There were long eulogies and tears. Jenna didn't come to the funeral. "Mom, I have so much work to do right now," she said on the phone. "I'm sorry about Grandma, but there's nothing I can do to help her. How did we raise such a selfish person?" Evelyn fought. However, she had no time to think. She had to deal with the immediate problems. John came to the funeral. He came along with his mother. The boy sat in a small room where people rarely came in and looked moodily out the window. After the burial ceremony, he approached his mother. "I can't stand it here any longer," he said. "Give me some money. I'm going home." Evelyn did not argue. There was neither strength nor desire. Silently, she handed her son the money for the fare. He left. After the ceremony, Evelyn was approached by a former classmate. They used to be friends. "How are you?" Molly asked. "I'm okay. It's just sad. It's like we weren't. I've never been close to my mother-in-law. It's a shame she's so stupid." Evelyn had a heart-to-heart with her friend about what had caused Wendy's second stroke. "Don't worry," Molly reassured her. "It's not that the stroke was caused by that. Maybe it just happened. But take a good look at your son." "What do you mean?" Evelyn was worried. "You know, I've been working in a drug dispensary for a long time, and I've seen all sorts of things." So the woman looked at her friend carefully. John's demeanor and appearance raised certain concerns. "Talk to her about what was wrong." Evelyn began to get nervous. "Have you noticed from what point his behavior has changed?" Molly asked. "Ever since he came back from camp, I wanted him to change his social circle. So he did. Now he's got these weird friends, most of them older than him. I wouldn't even recognize any of them. They look the same to me, skinny, long, wearing some kind of hoodie, and their hoods are pulled up. You can see their eyes. Every night John goes out with them now." "Where to? Why?" He doesn't tell me anything. How has he changed? A friend asked me. Nervous, secretive. Anything yells at the door of his room, and a lock cut out my personal space. He comes home late. He doesn't go to school very often. And I've got exams in a month. And he's got this weird glint in his eye. And Evelyn sighed angrily. I don't want to upset you, she said quietly. But what you've told me, plus your son's appearance. He's sullen, with bruises under his eyes, an unhealthy glint in his eyes, and irritability. These are not disappointing signs. Are you saying he's a drug addict? Evelyn finally uttered the dreaded word that had been rolling around in her head for a long time. You watch him. Molly still avoided a direct answer. In case of anything, call me, and we'll think of something. Evelyn stayed at her mother-in-law's apartment for a few more days. She cleaned up, put her papers in order. Here, quiet and alone. She thought back to the time when she lived with Robert and his mother. For some reason, only good things came to mind. She thought of her son. He didn't answer the phone. He didn't answer her messages. Was it true? Evelyn thought with horror. A few days later, Robert asked her to go with him to the notary about Wendy's will. It turned out that the woman had divided her property between her son and eldest granddaughter. The cottage and her father's old car were left to the grandson, and the apartment to Jenna. The grandmother loved her granddaughter very much. Evelyn came home. John was gone. The apartment was a complete mess. Things strewn about, dishes not washed in her room. The contents of her desk drawers turned out on the floor. The guy was obviously looking for something. The money the woman left for utility bills was gone. Good thing Evelyn kept her savings in a safe at work. Otherwise, they'd be gone too. The woman dialed her son, but he, as usual, did not answer. Wrote a message. He's alive. Last time his mother called all his friends and acquaintances. He probably didn't want it to happen again. John returned 2 days later, dirty, exhausted, and hungry. He silently poured himself a bowl of borscht and went to his room. John, let's talk. Knocked on the door. Evelyn has nothing to talk about. There was a reply from behind the door. Maybe about the money you took. There was silence in response. John barely finished 9th grade. The only reason he got C's was because his mother was the vice principal. How many times did Evelyn try to talk to her son? He wouldn't respond to anything. He'd leave the house on any pretext. When she tried to stop him, he just pushed her away. Then things started going missing. First, Evelyn couldn't find her gold chain. She wanted to wear it to the 11th grade prom, but couldn't find it. Figured she put it somewhere else. 2 weeks later, a ring the woman remembered was missing. She took it off and put it in her jewelry box. The day before, John, have you seen my ring? She asked her son at breakfast. What ring? The indifferent one. He questioned the gold one with the yellow stone. Dad, my father gave it to me. You're gonna say I stole it again. Suddenly, the boy started yelling. What do I need it for? I didn't see anything. John jumped up from the table. A teacup fell to the floor and shattered into shards, as my life for some reason thought Evelyn. Give me the money. My son turned around on the way out. I don't have any money, calmly answered the mother. And then you're surprised that your rings are missing. He hissed angrily as he left. Evelyn understood what was happening to her son, but she didn't want to believe it. She decided to check on him again. I bought some quality costume jewelry and a gold ring at a nearby store. A layman couldn't tell the difference. Even the hallmarks are on the case. Even my son noticed. What do you have? Asked, nodding at the rags colleagues at work on the anniversary of the money given. Here added, and bought a new ring instead of the one I lost. Innocently, she answered carefully, looking at her son. Gold only, and he asked. Of course, I don't wear costume jewelry. Evelyn was allergic to precious metals, so she only wore gold and silver. The kids knew that. And you complain about not having any money. The teenager gritted his teeth. Before going to bed, Evelyn removed the ring and left it in the bathroom. Like mine, and took it off. Forgot to put it back on. In the morning, the ring was not there. In the evening, the son came back, angry. "Give me money." He turned to the mother of the money. "You took my ring. You don't have enough." She asked him head on. "Your ring is bullshit. There's no gold in it, not even clothes. You got screwed." The guy laughed. "I know, I bought it at the store next door for $2.50. Evelyn smiled back. "What? How dare you?" John yelled and lunged at her with his fists. That's when the son hit his mother for the first time. Late that night, Evelyn called Molly and in tears told her what had happened. The friend said she would think about what could be done. In the morning, she called to see if John was home. He was asleep. He came back in the morning. He had gone to shake out his mother's purse. There was still some change in there. Evelyn was used to hiding money from her son. An hour later, an ambulance came for John. The friend brought the documents, signing which Evelyn agreed on behalf of her son to compulsory treatment in a drug dispensary. There was no other option. When John was taken out by the orderlies, he was screaming and crying, promising that he would never do it again. He fell to his knees and begged for one last chance. Evelyn cried, "Don't listen to him." Her friend reassured her, "Only treatment can help him. He's just a child." John was taken away. Evelyn cried all day. Her friend called and told her everything was fine. How was that possible in this situation? The boy was placed in a private room. He was given good care and constant monitoring. "You did the right thing." Molly said it again. But that didn't make Evelyn feel any better. The woman wandered around the empty apartment and could not understand when her favorite son became a drug addict. What had happened to them all? The boy was facing a long treatment and a long rehabilitation. He was not allowed to talk on the phone, receive visitors, or otherwise contact the outside world. By then, Jenna had inherited the estate. The girl even came all the way from Moscow for that. Money for her has always been in the first place. The girl entered the mother's house and looked around squeamishly. "And you haven't done any repairs here since I left?" Camille asked. "No, I haven't had time for that," Evelyn replied, looking at her changed daughter. Camille hadn't been home in years. Jenna looked gorgeous. Expensive, delirious clothes, manicure, hairstyle, makeup. Everything spoke of the girl's high standard of living. "So you work?" the mother asked. "Of course, as an accountant in a very good firm," smiling, replied the daughter. "It is necessary to look accordingly. Here I have to invest a lot in myself. And now I want to buy an apartment. I'm tired of paying such sums for rented accommodation. Apartments in Moscow are expensive," my mother said. "Yes, not cheap," hummed Jenna. "Grandma's inheritance will come in handy. I'll sell her apartment. I think you can get a good sum for her 2 apartments here. Besides, it's not a bad neighborhood. And I'll leave all the furniture in the apartment. Come and live, as they say. But it's not enough for an apartment in Moscow." The girl grimaced. "Jenna, you work. Take a mortgage," her mother advised. "That'll be enough." "Yeah, and live 10 years in debt." Jenna smiled wryly. "I've been thinking about this," she continued to father. "After all, he left us the apartment in 3 equal shares, right?" My mother agreed, not yet realizing what the catch was. "I think we should sell it and divide the money into 3 equal parts. I'll take mine. That way I'll have enough for the apartment." "Wait, where are we going to live with John?" Evelyn was surprised. "And you'll buy your own place with your 2 parts. It's only fair." Jenna was sure she was right. "Daughter, but we won't be able to buy a proper apartment with the money we have left. We have a 2-bedroom apartment. If we sell it and give you your part of it, the money we get won't be enough for a 2-room apartment. Then we can't buy a 1-room apartment." "I don't care," Jenna said. "I'm entitled to my share, and I'm not going to miss this chance." Although she turned to her mother. "If you have any savings, you can give me the money for my share. Then I won't have to sell the apartment. And get Grandma's junk out of my room, please." Jenna shoved Wendy's bag with the rest of her things with her foot. "I'll have to stay here for a few days." Evelyn didn't know what she should do. On the one hand, she didn't have any savings, but she didn't want to sell the apartment either. She needed a place to live with John. And Jenna's brothers hadn't even asked her anything. Suddenly, the woman thought. She decided to go see her son. Maybe they'd let her see him. A friend led her to the ward. "Just a few minutes," she said, "and please don't get emotional. Keep your cool." John was alone in a small room. There was a bed, a nightstand, and even a TV on the wall. The boy was lying with his back turned to the wall. "John," son called Evelyn. The boy lifted his head up. "Mom." Joyfully he exclaimed, "You came for me. I knew you wouldn't leave me here." "John, wait, I didn't come for you. I came to check on you," said the woman. "Check up on me how? Can't you see I'm not doing well here? You sent me here on purpose to keep me out of your way." The guy's eyes were spitting anger. "Get me out of here, please." Suddenly he sobbed, falling to his knees and hugging her legs. "I'll never get stoned ever again, or give me money." He looked at her with crazed eyes. John was pale, blue circles under his eyes. His hands trembled nervously. There was an unhealthy glint in his eyes. Evelyn ran out the door. I hate you," shouted the guy, and pounded his fists on the door. The orderlies arrived, injecting sedatives. The noises outside the door subsided. "I told you, it's too early to visit him," softly reproached her friend. "Come to my place. There is a conversation," she said. Evelyn turned to her Molly, as she had long ago, in school time. "Do you know how your son got hooked on all this?" Molly asked. "I don't. I can only guess that at camp," the woman replied quietly. "Yes, he talked to our psychologist. For a long time did not want to make contact, but then he told me. There was just such a shift for children from not very well-off families. A couple of guys with social habits, I guess. What about John? He's looking for himself. He's a very complicated guy. Yeah, he's always wanted extreme sports and easy money. New experiences. Sad," agreed Evelyn. "Well, you're looking for excitement," Molly said. "He shared a room with these guys. They got him hooked on drugs in 3 weeks. Not so much that he got hooked, but he just liked it. Turns out these guys are also from your village and go to school in your neighborhood. So after he got back, things continued." Evelyn cried quietly, wiping her tears with her hand. "Can this be cured?" she asked. Quietly, honestly. Her friend looked at her sadly. "Very difficult. John doesn't want to change anything, doesn't see the problem. And that's where the result depends on. But don't give up hope. We're not losing hope. And I would also advise you to change your place of residence. If he returns to his surroundings, everything will definitely happen again." Evelyn now knew what to do. After leaving Molly's, she dialed Jenna. "Daughter, I'm willing to sell the apartment and give all the money to you, and you give me and John Grandma's 2-bedroom, she said. "But it's not an equal exchange." Jenna didn't hold back. "Our apartment is in a good neighborhood, in a new building, and our village is more developed. Real estate prices here are much higher than in Baburinum Zarekni. It's better for you to sell our apartment and buy another one with the money. In Zareki, you can even buy a 3-bedroom in an old house." As much as I didn't like money, I tried to be honest with my mother and explain her lack of practicality. "Do you agree or not? It's my decision. If it is, of course it is. I remain in the plus." The girl was happy. The paperwork was finalized quickly. Evelyn's apartment was also sold quickly. The woman began to settle down in a new place. She even found a job in the local school as a math teacher who had just gone on maternity leave. She never went to see her son again. A friend told me about the progress of his treatment, said John was on the mend. Jenna bought a small apartment in Moscow. On the outskirts, of course, not in the best neighborhood, but it was her own. She called her mother even less often. She couldn't send money now. And the inheritance had already been received and divided. Her father also refused to help Miranda on a permanent basis. "Listen, daughter, you're working. You've already got a place to live. It's time to take care of yourself. They'll give you some money for the holidays from time to time, of course. But you can't expect monthly payments from me. I have a family of my own, a kid to take care of. So no offense, he said to his daughter when she once again called with complaints. Why didn't he give her a dime in October? John was discharged in November. Instead of a confident, cocky guy, Evelyn saw a teenager with a blank stare. For a long time, John was still coming to grips with the 10th grade program. The young man was learning at home. Homeschooling was arranged by Evelyn at his school. Day after day passed. John gradually chewed up. A psychologist worked with the boy. He studied with tutors. Within a year, he caught up with the program, started preparing for the US. But he had no friends, and John only left the house when he had to. Evelyn thought better of it that way. The woman herself worked quietly in the new school. She perfectly integrated into the team, continued to communicate with Molly, her old friend. Now they lived not far from each other. They could see each other sometimes and communicate. Molly also lived alone. She was divorced from her husband. Her children had grown up and moved to other cities, so the women shared their loneliness with each other. Meanwhile, John finished 11th grade and passed the US. Passed so that even surprised himself. He entered the university he wanted on a budget. John went to a neighboring city to study, and Evelyn was left alone in an empty apartment. From time to time, the son called and told briefly about his life. Less often, the mother came more often. Sometimes, and the father transferred money, the guy on the card. 2 years passed like that. In the 3rd year, I decided to get a part-time job. He didn't have enough money. He wanted to live without denying himself anything. His mother didn't have that much money. My father didn't give me much either. No matter how much Evelyn discouraged her son, he got a job as a bartender in a nightclub. As they say, there's no escaping fate. Her son's phone calls were much less frequent. Busy all the time, she heard his mother on the phone. She also heard familiar intonations, but she didn't want to believe the worst until the last moment. After the summer session, Evelyn received a notice from the institute that John was expelled for truancy and for tales. He had failed the session. He didn't pick up the phone. He hasn't called for a long time either, sometimes only sending familiar messages. He's alive. He's fine. Evelyn told Molly everything. She just shook her head. Probably snapped, she said regretfully. Nightclubs often sell that kind of crap. That's probably where John got hooked on it again. Can you help him? My friend asked hopefully. I don't think so. He doesn't want to be treated. Maybe that's why he didn't last long. The treatment will have less effect each time. I'm sorry, she said quietly. What do we do now? Evelyn asked. Wait until he wants to go back to normal, and then we can help him. And if he doesn't? Evelyn cried. Let's hope for the best. Her friend tried to reassure her. The woman decided to go to see her son. However, when she arrived at John's dormitory, she did not find him there. He had not paid for the room for a long time and did not appear here. Where is he? No one knew. At the club where he worked, he wasn't there either. Fired. The new bartender answered his mother's question with irritation. I still owed money from the cash register, but I forgot to put it back. So my mother came home with nothing. John never called. He showed up 6 months later. Dirty, ragged, thin, and angry John. Mother rushed to him. Give her some money. Threw her son from the threshold. But I have no money, answered his mother. Let's talk. I can help you. The son pushed her away and walked into the apartment. First, he was shaken by the mother's purse, then her jewelry box. Don't you dare, the mother rushed toward him. However, he pushed her away so that the woman fell to the floor, took John and the laptop on which Evelyn was working. See you later, he said, turning around at the threshold. I'll be back in a month, and the money. Evelyn was left sitting on the floor, shedding tears. Her beloved youngest son had turned into a monster. We need to call the police, Molly said in response to her story. I've worked with this kind of thing all my life. I'm sorry, but he's beyond help. Molly, what police? He's my son. Do you want him to kill you in a month? Or do you plan on giving him everything you have? He's my son. Maybe he'll understand me. Maybe he'll hear me. You're the one who said he needs help. Evelyn looked at her friend with hope. He's a junkie. He won't understand. Molly shook her head sadly. The month passed like a dream. Evelyn promised her friend that she would call her if there was anything wrong. However, John did not show up after a month, nor did he show up 2 months later. Then he suddenly came again, opening the door of the apartment with his own key. Outwardly, the guy hadn't changed much since the last time they'd seen each other. Only the shadows under his eyes were deeper. Yes, the clothes were more worn. You could tell they hadn't been washed in a while. "Son, why don't you eat?" Evelyn asked. The first thing that came to mind. "I've got the money ready." The boy smiled unkindly and said, "Where did I get the money?" The woman said quietly, "I don't know. You always save for a rainy day." "Well, it's already come." John laughed. "Where's the money?" He came close to the mother, and she suddenly realized that he had nothing to lose. The man punched her in the face. She fell from the house. He was leaving with all of Evelyn's savings, and also with her phone and wedding ring. He didn't find it last time. It was in the cupboard. The guy also took the new linens. This happened a few more times. John gradually took everything he could get out of the apartment. Sometimes he beat his mother, and sometimes he cried and apologized, crawling on his knees. This was what kept Evelyn from calling the police. Each time, Evelyn promised Molly that she would be sure to call the police next time, but she never did. In the last year, Evelyn had aged 10 years at once. No one would give her 55 now. She looked 70. The woman sat there, dried up. "Evelyn, if you don't call the police, I'll do it myself," Molly said, arriving at her friend's house after her regular meeting with her son. "Not only did he take everything out of the house, but you're not even alive anymore." "Well," answered Evelyn, "I'll come to my senses, and then we'll go." A couple of days later, however, her daughter from the capital unexpectedly came to see her. The girl still as squeamishly walked through the apartment. She said through gritted teeth, "Mom, have you sold the car yet?" She asked. "No." "Why?" The woman asked. "I need money. I can't pay the loan." The daughter said, "What about a job? A steady income? I thought you said you were doing well." "I was fired from my job." The daughter didn't go into details. "What about the car?" "Leave me alone. I've already made you cry." A woman. On emotion, she told her daughter that Jenna last year does not give her life. "That's just the way things are," Jenna said thoughtfully. "I'll probably stay with you for a while." The girl said, thinking about something, "Don't go to the police yet. You'll get there. He's your son, not some bandit." After that, Jenna often disappeared from home. Evelyn never went to the police. One day, when she came home early, the woman found her daughter born with the papers. She had spread them out on the couch and was studying them, making notes in a notebook. "What are you doing?" Evelyn asked. She saw among the papers the documents for the car and the apartment. "I'm making sure your papers are in order." "I don't know what's going on," said her daughter, not at all embarrassed. "There's no chance of that," repeated the mother. "Never mind," smiled the daughter. But something in that smile Evelyn did not like. A few days later, in the morning, when the mother and daughter were still asleep, John appeared. He looked animated, saying hello to Jenna. It seemed to the mother that he was not at all surprised to see his sister here. "Sign." The boy handed the mother some papers. "What are these?" the woman asked. She looked at the documents and froze. In front of her was a gift deed for an apartment and a power of attorney for a car. The only thing missing on the papers was her signature. "I won't sign it," she said. "You will." Angry, smiled and punched her mother in the face. "You don't have to kill her, but you have to sign it on paper." Jenna spoke up. "So you know." The woman quietly turned to her daughter. "I was the mastermind," the daughter boasted. "You'd better sign everything so you don't suffer." the girl said almost sympathetically. Evelyn signed the documents. Jonah was able to force her to do so. Outside the window, it was beginning to matchmake. Make it 3. And that car from Marish handed her Jenna's rag. What car? Asked, not understanding the woman. My daughter laughed. Get ready, muttered the son. We're leaving for a little trip. No, please don't. I'll just leave, cried the mother. No one listened to her, however. Jenna threw her an old down jacket for the day. Like walking in the woods, fell, passed out and froze with a wicked smile. She pronounced. John started the car. They drove in silence. The forest appeared ahead. You're really going to leave me here? The mother said in a low voice. Yes, I need money, he answered simply. But you are my son. I gave birth to you and raised you. I've been with you and supported you always. Tears flowed from the woman's eyes. Don't you feel sorry for your own mother? You took everything away from me. I signed the deed to the apartment. Let me out. I'll let you out, John laughed. I don't feel sorry for anybody. Well, you don't want to know. The boy glared unkindly. Don't worry, it won't hurt. Come on out. We're here, he said, stopping the car at the entrance to the forest. John, please, listen to me. I'm your mother. Let me go. Take the apartment and the car. I just want to live. An old woman was crying. No, Jenna warned me this would happen. You cry here now, and then you go straight to the police. She's the one who talked you out of it. You would have turned me in a long time ago. Come out, he said. Evelyn took the snow slowly through the woods, dusting her boots, but she didn't notice it. Behind her, her son was walking, her little favorite boy, the one she had always pitied and tried to protect from an unjust world. He was coming to kill her. It won't hurt, John repeated in a drug-induced delirium, and hit his mother over the head with a stick he'd found in the woods. Evelyn fell into oblivion, abandoned in the cold by her children. The beaten old woman moaned throughout the forest, attracting hungry animals. Suddenly, she heard someone creeping toward her through the snowdrifts. John came back. He couldn't leave me. She fought through the fog. But a complete stranger was leaning over her. Already on the way, the woman recognized the girl. She remembered her as a girl. Her parents had lived next door to Evelyn's mother-in-law at the time when she had lived there with her husband. Stephen took Evelyn to the hospital. The police were immediately called there. Stephen and Camille told them that they had found the old woman in the woods, although she was not an old woman, only 56 years old. Evelyn did not want to testify against her own children, but she had no other choice. They didn't just want to leave her homeless. They were trying to kill her. Camille called Molly. Evelyn knew her number by heart. The woman came right over. Evelyn. She rushed to Evelyn. Oh my God, what is it? Tears were streaming down the woman's cheeks. She looked at Hidding's battered head friend and cried. I told you, let's go to the police. And you. The daughter came. She won't let me. Do you realize Jenna knew? She didn't interrupt quietly. The woman said. She didn't just know. She organized the whole thing. The investigator said, walking into the room. How she organized it, Evelyn didn't understand. Just the idea to take away all your property belongs to her. She told me everything. Tried to blame it on John, but he also confessed. But she works. She has an apartment in Moscow. Evelyn said quietly. She doesn't work anywhere. She was caught up in financial fraud and got a ticket out of work. Couldn't pay the mortgage on the apartment. What mortgage? She has her own apartment. The woman insisted. No, she doesn't. She sold hers and got a bigger one, a fancy one. She had a rich lover. Promised to help with the mortgage. Yeah, too greedy. Your daughter decided to break up his family. Sam, I wrote that they have a daughter. I sent a picture. The guy turned out to be a family man. Dumped Jenna. He gave up his daughter, and his wife forgave him. So your daughter was left in debt, like in silk, and with an unwanted child in her arms. She came to you for money. She thought she'd at least sell your car. She's going abroad. But it's my car. Evelyn was surprised. Yes, she was counting on both jewelry and money. What have you been saving? I didn't realize John had already taken it all out. When I found out, I was very upset. Then, you were the one who told her about John showing up again. She got the idea for the apartment. She found her brother herself through some old friends of his. She arranged everything with them, found a corrupt notary who helped her draw up the deeds in her name. She promised her brother half after the sale. Of course she wouldn't do that. Would have put John away as soon as they found you frozen in the woods. Jenna's already made up a legend. How John came to you, locked her in a room, and took her mother away to some unknown destination. While she was able to free herself, while she waited for her mother. That's how it would have happened if kind people hadn't found you. Wait a minute. I just remembered something. Evelyn, you said she had a daughter, but she never told me. The girl's about 2 years old. She's in quarantine at the orphanage right now. Her daughter turned her in personally when she realized she couldn't get money from her lover through the baby. A native daughter in an orphanage. The woman could not utter another word. Tears rolled from her classroom. Evelyn was crying. How did I raise such children? What did I do wrong? She asked Molly. I didn't know what to say to my friend. Stephen and Camille came to see Evelyn. They brought the woman fruit and asked what else they could do to help. The woman thanked them. They treated her better than her own children. Camille handed Evelyn a drawing with the inscription, Dear Grandma Evelyn. The woman cried again. Somewhere out there in the Moscow orphanage her own granddaughter was now in. There was a knock on the ward. Robert stood on the threshold. He approached his ex-wife and sat down beside her on the table. Why didn't you tell me about John? He asked. I could have solved everything. I didn't want to bother you, the woman replied quietly. We've missed something, Robert said. I blame you. I've been away all the time. Work, worries. The children grew up without a father. So that's how it turned out. Lucky's doing the right thing now. Every evening, she asks me to do with my son. Then I teach him lessons, then play board games. We all play together. Yes, she turned out to be wiser than me. And I'm a teacher, Evelyn said sadly. By the way, she said hello to you. Robert pulled out a pie carefully wrapped in white towels. Did Vanessa bake this for you? The woman was surprised. I thought she didn't cook. Now everything has changed. She cooks and takes care of her son. And now she is almost a perfect hostess and mother, said her ex-husband proudly. What can I do for you? He asked. Really? You can, mysteriously answered Evelyn, and began to tell her husband the story she had heard from the investigator. Get well, Robert said quietly, saying goodbye. And forgive me, he repeated. I'll try to help you. Evelyn recovered surprisingly quickly and was discharged home. John and Jenna were on trial. The daughter was jailed for 8 years and the son for 15. He, as it turned out, had a large baggage of committed crimes. The mother listened to the verdict calmly. She understood that the crime must be punished. She was allowed to see her daughter before the trial. Mommy, she cried. If Evelyn had not known the truth, she would have believed her sincerity. It's all John. It's all he made up. He threatened me. I didn't want to. I know everything. The woman replied quietly but firmly. You wanted to set him up, didn't you? Jenna's tears dried immediately. You could have just sold the car and given me the money, she said angrily. What about your daughter? Evelyn asked. I wrote a waiver. What do I need her for? Just trouble. She was with the nanny all the time anyway, while Sam was paying, and I refused to pay. As soon as my wife got here, I was gonna dump her. Jenna laughed. I am very ashamed that you are my daughter, said the woman quietly. I'm sorry, of course, but I won't come to you. And don't expect any transfers either. But you are my mother. You must help me, said Jenna. That's okay. It's true that you tried to kill me with irony and self-surprise, replied Evelyn, walked away from her daughter. She was almost relieved. All the dots were almost all dotted. You must come with me, asked Evelyn to her friend. When were all the formalities of the papers settled? In the month that passed after her discharge from the hospital, the woman had changed a lot. And from a wrinkle and an old woman, she began to turn into a youthful, older woman again. And most importantly, she calmed down and came to her senses and went back to work. Now the woman found meaning in life again. "Of course, dear," replied the friend. "How can I leave you at a time like this?" The road to Moscow was not close, but Evelyn felt confident behind the wheel. She had been driving for a long time. The only thing was that it took a long time to wake up through the Moscow streets. Here, the navigator came to the rescue. The women also drove up to one of the baby houses. Evelyn sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "Evelyn, have you changed your mind?" asked my friend. "Have you?" "No, of course not," she replied. "It's just such a responsibility. I love her already. This is my granddaughter, my daughter. You and I have already come here 3 times. I'm afraid not to repeat the mistakes in bringing up children. I still don't understand what I missed, where I went wrong. After all, I loved them and was strict in moderation. That's how it is philosophically," said a friend. "Sometimes even in normal families grow up such children less often. Normal kids in dysfunctional families. But things happen. You shouldn't blame yourself. You have to try not to make the same mistakes in the future. And without you, this baby has no future. Your daughter doesn't need her. It's not for nothing that she wrote a refusal. The father, as I understand it too. The girl isn't even registered to him. You're all she's got left." "Yeah, and I only got her. And you, of course. Evelyn smiled at her friend. "It's amazing how many good people there are around. Stephen and Camille see me off every week. My ex-husband hired a team of builders, and while I was in the hospital, they completely renovated the apartment. He didn't tell me. I came back, and the apartment was someone else's, and the furniture was modern, new, not mine. I only realized from the things in the closet that she bought me new pots and pans. They're good people after all. What did she always tell you? What are you like? And the people around you. How you treat people is how they treat you. Yeah, it just didn't work with my kids." Bitterly sighed Evelyn. "But it happens. Let's go already, friend, because the granddaughter waited for you." The teacher was just dressing Kalinka. The woman called her, driving up. The girl's things were already packed. Seeing her grandmother, the girl smiled happily and stretched out her hands to her. Lucky little girl smiled at the teacher. Recently only got to us and has already found her home. I was surprised when she was brought to us. A young, beautiful woman in a luxury car, and such a cruel Olechka cried so much, so called for her. I still have her mommy in my ears, when we literally held her away from your daughter, and she didn't care. Not a shred of pity. Sign what? Is she talking? I'm in a hurry. Our superintendent asked her if she felt sorry for her own daughter. She said it was a pity she'd given birth to her in the first place. She never visited her daughter again. Evelyn asked quietly, "What do you mean?" She made a waiver right away. She brought the baby's things, said she didn't need them anymore. We asked about the girl's father. She gave us a number. "Did you contact him?" The woman asked. Of course we did. But he didn't want to talk to us. Said he was taking a DNA test. And as it turned out, Jenna wanted to pin someone else's baby on him, so he had nothing to do with the girl. The man wasn't surprised the baby ended up in an orphanage. Said Jenna only wanted the girl as a way to get money out of him, and as long as he was sure that his daughter he paid correctly. By the way, the man transferred a considerable sum to the account of our institution, said that he was sorry, but the girl will be better here than with such a mother. I didn't want to believe that my daughter was capable of that, but after everything, I'm not surprised anymore. Evelyn said, "Here is our beauty and ready," said the teacher to button up the girl's overalls. "I wish you happiness. I think everything will be fine now." Evelyn hugged her granddaughter, and she trustingly clung to her and smiled a naive, childish smile, so sincere and full of selfless love that the woman's heart squeezed. Only children know how to love truly, not for something, but just because you are. When they returned home, they found a real holiday in Evelyn's apartment. There were balloons hanging everywhere and garlands on the baby's crib, which, by the way, had not been there before. There was a huge polar bear and some dolls. In the room were playing Robert's son and Vanessa and Camille. The women themselves were busy setting the table in the kitchen. Robert was trying to screw the extra wheels onto the children's bicycle and cursing unkindly because the wrench kept slipping and the bolts wouldn't fit. Stephen held the bike and tried to help with advice. Christopher smiled indulgently as he watched the men. "Honey, please." It's not the first time Vanessa looked out of the kitchen. "They're back. That's to everyone here. Gifts, hugs, and congratulations, holiday feasting and merriment." All of this was new to Ring. She clung tightly to Evelyn's hand and didn't let go until she was interested in the toys in the nursery. In half an hour, she was already playing merrily there with Camille, who gladly took charge of her. The adults gathered around the festive table. At last, all the difficulties were behind them. Evelyn looked lovingly at the family faces. "Sometimes," she said, raising her glass with her relatives, "and the real loved ones are not those who are their birthright, but those who give you a chance to start a new life. Thank you, my dearest, most beloved people. Without you, I could not have survived this terrible time for me. Now I know that the most valuable thing is the people who care about you." Outside the window, it snowed for a long time, covering the snow-white blanket, all the bad things that happened before. And I propose to everyone to start a new life with a clean, white, snowy sheet.